Eli5 How did fossil fuels damn the world? I learned about coral reef deaths in 7th grade, I'm now 30. Let me be the one to say, fossil fuels have not damned the world. On the contrary, they have brought cheap, plentiful, and relatively clean, high-density energy to the masses, and allowed us to reach incredible levels of prosperity. You have to think about what people used to burn before fossil fuels, mainly wood and dung, which were far more polluting than fossil fuels are today. We have been moving away from highly polluting energy toward lower polluting, higher density energy since the dawn of civilization, and if we can just embrace nuclear, we will take that next step. It is about carbon deposit. All living on Earth are carbon-based, they absorb carbon from outside to grow themselves. Treated it directly, animal did it indirectly. Herbivore eat tree, carnivore eat other animal. Carbon was turned into biomass. If something die and the condition is right, they become fossil fuel, coal, oil, and stay in that form until we dig it up, then burn it. Carbon that was supposedly stay underground, now being released in form of CO2. CO2 can retain heat better than other gas. More heat is trapped on Earth. Temperature rise, weather pattern change. Millions of years ago there was a lot of plants that died over the course of millions of years. This was a carboniferous era. Those plants took billions of tons of carbon out of the atmosphere and carbon cycle of the planet. They got buried and turned into fuel. Less carbon was in the air, the climate slowly got cooler. Then within 200 years we took that billion of tons of carbon, which took billions of years to be buried, and put it right back in the sky with no ability for the natural carbon cycle to keep up. Isotope testing proves it's the fuels we burn. Fossil fuels are carbon-based. When burned they release a mix of carbon and oxygen, CO2, which creates a film over the atmosphere along with other gases. It's an effect like a tint on the window of a car. Likewise, these gases allow light, heat and other stuff through, but they don't allow it out, so the planet starts heating up like a microwave, which makes forest fires, drafts, polar caps melting, etc. The issue is that we're applying said window tint to our planet's window way quicker than the planet can clean it up. So we're killing it. When no living stuff plants gets buried and sit underground for longer than the Bible, it turns to flammable goop, crude oil. This goop is made of carbon. We burn carbon for energy. It burns really well. Trees? Carbon. You? Carbon. Gasoline? Carbon. What happens to the carbon after it's burned? It hangs around. What happens when it hangs around? It makes the atmosphere a little bit hotter. Sun energy gets stuck on carbon dioxide, and it makes the oceans more acidic. Google carbonic acid if you want to know more. Some fine explanations here, but none of it will cause your coworkers to re-examine their position. It's not about logic, facts, science with them. They have bought into the conservative anti-woke cult. Everywhere they look they see bogeymen depriving them of their rightful opportunity and position. Denying climate change for them is standing up to the liberal media agenda. You can always expect 5–10% of the population to harbor these irrational, often hateful beliefs. But when it gets to 40 as it is today, we are all fucked. Potholer54's Climate Change Made Easy playlist nails it, and addresses all the usual counter-conspiracy theories and exaggerated claims, some of which are being made in this thread. It's explained very simply from scratch. Climate change is going to be astronomically expensive for us. Those drilling cash straight out of the ground and paying for misinformation and politicians' votes will be financially cushioned for generations. A lot of my co-workers are the same. Some engineers, in fact, who you'd think would favor the side of science, keep mentioning how the climate is cyclical. They just seem to be almost dismissing the numerous factors that contribute to global disasters and boiling it down to something like it'll sort itself out. I mean, I'm sure the planet will stabilize, but like someone else wrote, at what cost? How different will the state of the planet be at that point? Will it be beyond a state of repair? The saddest part is that the US government didn't think cannabis was the boogeyman. Hemp-based fuels could have been used, which are far better for the environment. I am not really convinced that electric cars are the answer given how much needs to go into mining the materials, and it will generate more e-waste to deal with. Along with most electricity is generated with fossil fuels anyway. It's kind of like thinking cows are cute but still eating a steak because you aren't the one killing it. It's amazing that so many people think man-made climate change is fake. For literally over 100 years, long before anyone was getting research grants from the government, can't believe some people are dim enough to believe that as a driver, scientists have known and made public the fact that adding carbon to the atmosphere creates climate change. For anyone to believe that this is some sort of conspiracy is an incomprehensible level of ignorance about how the world works. All the smoke from burning things is like a big fluffy jacket around the Earth's atmosphere. Jackets are nice in wintertime, but in summertime it's too much and you get really sweaty and hot and you wish you could take it off. But you can't take it off without getting all that extra carbon out of the atmosphere. Which is really hard. We should probably stop putting so much carbon up there so we don't have to wear a big fluffy jacket during the summer. There is an interesting aspect to point out. The CO2 content of the atmosphere is actually very low. It's now 421 parts per million ppm, or about 0.042, in pre-industrial times, it was 280 parts per million 0.028. By 1950, it had only risen to 310 parts per million. Those making climate denial arguments in bad faith will try to tell you CO2 has only increased by 0.14. Do not be fooled by this idiocy. The increase is 50. Excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is like a blanket over the Earth that warms things. Terms of coral reefs, a lot of the excess CO2 gets absorbed by the oceans, increasing acidity. There already is a great example. The planet Venus's runaway greenhouse effect makes it the hottest planet in the solar system despite being the second closest from the Sun. Venus's atmosphere is primarily carbon dioxide. Everyone thinks it's fake as we have ice ages and heat death and extinction events, but you have to be dumb to not think all the pollution is making it worse and accelerating it. Some people think why should we care if it's going to happen anyway, but these things happen over 100,000 years of years. We may be talking having a world for another 10 or 20 generations and more time to solve our problems. When a car sits all day in the sun with the windows rolled up, it gets very hot inside. The windows let sunlight in but they don't let the heat out. Greenhouse gases in the atmosphere work much the same way. They're like invisible blankets, letting sunlight in because they're invisible but keeping the heat in because they're blankets. Carbon absorbs infrared rays from the sun. The more carbon in the atmosphere, the hotter we get. If we look at planets with high greenhouse gases, it gives us a clue to what is possible. We've also learned that it only takes a small fluctuation in the amount of carbon in the atmosphere to present a significant change to the Earth's temp. Plants spend hundreds of thousands of millions of years. This answer is great, but the above number is too big. You may have just meant it as a turn of phrase. In reality, the great oxygenation event caused by blue-green algae was 2.4 billion years ago. Hundreds of thousands of millions is hundreds of billions. You kinda explained it yourself. Climate alarmism has been happening for longer than all of us can remember. The world was already supposed to end numerous times. The world was supposed to flood. The heat was supposed to decimate populations. Just look around. We're fine. You're a special person for being willing to see a different side of the argument even when those around you insist their view is the correct view. I wish more people were willing to do deeper dives into polarized topics. All the above is basically correct. Additionally, fossil fuels are disrupting the balance of carbon dioxide production versus absorption, so there is more CO2 in the atmosphere now than ever before. Your question has a false premise. The world isn't even slightly damned. We humans may be, as others explained. I learned about coral reef deaths in 7th grade, I'm now 30. That's how, by doing little about it after we learn that we need to do something. Kudos to you for trying to find and learn the truth despite being surrounded by negationists. This is the true scientific approach.